be no common accord until people started to understand that they need to love the sinner, not judge the sinner. I think that you got a few people's attention. But as long as we continue to judge, we're never going to be able to get to the loving part. Because you can't do both.
It's like Pastor Dan was saying, instead of judging them, let's look back on ourselves too and then say, how do we love them? It's like, oh, Jesus loved us while we were in sin.
I've had the opportunity in my life to be around a lot of people who at different points were intoxicated. And there have been opportunities for me where I joined in with them. But I've never walked alongside a drunk when I was sober that he didn't make me stagger too. And that's the biggest thing people struggle with. You're coming alongside someone that's got a burden or something going on in their life, that you have to accept part of that. And you've got to be willing to accept that responsibility and try to help them through it. And not,
But you don't want to dive back into there.
That's right.
You want to uplift that from
I mean, we restore a brother. It talks about that all the time. Yeah, several times. It talks about it in Matthew. It talks about it in Corinthians, and the, you know, leaving the 99 for the one. You know, it's there all the time, but I think we just get so much. We get too focused on self-preservation and protecting the self. Or protecting the clique. I mean,
it goes back to the excuses and judgment. You know, there's all these things that prevent us, and it's the devil. You know, sin, when Jesus was tempted by the devil, you know, where did he take him to? He took him to the wilderness the first time, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think that kind of signified the world, or out in the wilderness, and then he took him to the temple. He tempted him at the temple, you know, and so sin's everywhere. We can't be so naive that we don't think it's going to come into church, because that's where the devil does his best work, I believe.
If he can keep a church in discord and disunity, he's accomplished his goal. Because people are supposed to be able to look at the church and see a love. I mean, Francis Chan talked about it in Multiply, a love like you've never seen. But you can't see that love if you're not unified.
I like the verse 16. It says, so those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first will be last. What's that like? I'm talking about like, what's that talking about?
What do you think it's talking about?
Like, I don't know. Like,
it's the serving attitude.
Yeah, the last will be first and the first will be last. You know, the people who seem like they've got it all together, the people who are promoting their works or promoting they are God's gift to the church, or they're God's gift to God Himself. You know, they seem to have it all together. According to the people, they had it all together. But Jesus went to the lowest of the low, who would be considered the last in society, and went after them. And it's not about, I mean, a note here says, a disciple of Jesus should not measure his or her worth by comparing it with the accomplishments and sacrifices of others, but should focus on serving with a heart of gratitude in response to God's grace. So the question comes down to, what's your motive? Is it a response to God's grace, or is it a response to the people around you? You know, why do you do what you do? That's a great question to ask people. Why do you teach Sunday school? Why are you a deacon? Why do you serve on this committee? You know, why do you sing in the choir? Why do you play in praise band? Why are you a greeter? Why do you hand out bulletins? Why do you, I mean, just ask, you know, if it's anything other than a response to God's grace, then maybe we need to recheck our motivation. And I have to do this a lot. I have to make sure that I'm not doing it in spite of people, in seeking a revengeful attitude. I mean, it goes hand in hand with all of this, and it's constantly being on guard, because, like Peter says in 1 Peter, the devil's like a roaring lion just ready to pounce you. I mean, the second he gets an opportunity, once he gains a foothold, he's gonna tear you up. And so it always has to be on guard. And Jesus was this way. That's why Paul wrote in Philippians 2. Jesus, who considered others more important than himself, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his advantage, but humbled himself in the form of a servant. He knew what it was about. It was in response to what God had already done in his life, because he was God. But that's the same attitude that we need to have. Which is funny that Jesus teaches this. Which is funny, that's why Jesus teaches this. And then you go right to the Sons of Thunder. The mom of the Sons of Thunder come through James and John and ask for a request. Logan just sent in, and that's why serving is so important. It keeps us willing to give and keeps us away from the self-possessive mindset, which lets us love others more. Thank you, Logan, for the text in. Listening live from the big city of Hartford. And so you have this teaching on servant, and then you have this mother's request of the last will be first and the first will be last, and then here comes, hey, can my son sit on your right and on your left? It's a slight arrogance about it, and very good possibility. They think it's almost guaranteed that James and John were the cousins of Jesus, and the disciples weren't necessarily indignant over the request, but just over the sheer fact that they tried to use family to gain an advantage with Jesus. And that goes back to it again. Go back to the laborers in the vineyard. What did they try to do? We've worked here all day. I should give more. I'm going to use that to my advantage. I've worked here longer. This should be my advantage. The reward is still the same. It does not matter. And so we need this particular request, and the attitude of service is that we shouldn't use things in the church to gain an advantage for our clique, for more power, for more control, for more self-promotion. It should always be about promoting ultimately the glory of God in response to what God has done in our life. If that makes sense. And this is a daily thing. This takes daily denial of self and taking up your cross. And I think this is one of the most difficult things to do as a Christian. Yeah, every day to have that attitude that this is how I'm responding to God. Yeah. So.
Like you said, it starts with consistency and persistence.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And then Jesus gives us an act of service in healing the two blind men. In 34, and Jesus in pity touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. The crowd rebuked him. The disciples said no. And Jesus had pity. Jesus said, no, this is what it means to be a servant. This is what it's about. We're going to stop and we're going to take time for basically any and everybody. I mean, he even took time for the Pharisees, his biggest enemy. And he would stop and take time and answer their questions. He engaged and invested in them. And we are called to do the exact same thing all the time. All right, let's jump into why study the Bible. Multiply 3.1. He talks a lot about motive in here. All right, Caleb, what do you got?
Like in 91, it says, as a newborn depends on milk to survive and to grow, we should equally depend on the words of Scripture for our spiritual survival and growth. The words of the Bible have impacted millions of lives over thousands of years, and God wants it to change our lives as well. If you don't already love the Bible, pray that you will. I thought that was really good because he's talking about, like, referring to 1 Peter. He's saying, newborn infants, look at the milk and stuff like that. Because it's how you grow deeper in your walk is by reading. Because how can you say you follow Jesus if you don't even know how he lived his life?
That's a good point. I mean, he nails motive right off the bat. Many Christians misuse the Bible because they never ask themselves why they are studying it in the first place. And after I read this week, and as I sat down and read the Bible, I was like, what are my intentions? What are my motives? And pray that I would take anything that was familiar to me and I could put it out of my mind and read this as if I'm reading it for the first time. That is huge. That is huge.
You know, we have to, and you know, one of Satan's greatest tools today is noise in our life. Because to have a relationship with Christ, there has to come those times when we're still and we have to listen to His Word and we have to try to hear what He's saying to us. And the majority of the time it comes from here versus circumstances going on around your life. And if you don't spend any time here, then you're foolish to believe you're going to have some type of relationship or the relationship you should have. Because this is when He's going to talk to you the most, or in your prayer life. And there's so much noise, just like right now. When you think about that, all that is a distraction. How are you to have a relationship with someone if you can't talk to one another because there's all these distractions going on around you? Well, you wouldn't have a very good relationship. That's like, you know, don't pray when the TV's on. You know, your favorite show's on TV, that's when you're going to pray. You know, and I've heard guys say, well, I pray on the way to work and I pray on the way home. And, you know, I've done that too. But that shouldn't be my dedicated prayer time while I'm operating the vehicle. Because in reality, I should be more distracted praying than I should be if I was texting and driving. So, you know, noise is just... And I'm not talking about mechanical noise. There's a lot of noise that comes out of between people's lips that in reality is noise. And it becomes a distraction to what our true goal should be in trying to witness to Christ. Because some things don't need to be said. You know, bad enough you thought it. Can't believe you said it. So.
True that. One of my biggest ones that I've been challenged is just simply my phone. How often we bury ourselves in our phone. I mean, I do it at home. I do it at work. I mean, it is constant. And I have to think, okay, that's taking time away from my wife. That's taking time away from my kids. It's taking time away from my prayer time. That's taking time away from my Bible reading. It's taking time away from engaging in a relationship. Even when we're sitting, you know, meeting with somebody, we'll sit there and we'll be like on our phone and be immersed into whatever it is. I mean, is it that important that we have to be on a phone that we have to pull ourselves away from everything?
Well, why would I mean? And